Building a big profitable consumer brand in India which does well over the long term is really, really hard. Most people think India has a huge population, a lot of young people who are buying a lot of products, so it should be easy to build consumer brands in India. But the reality is that most people have very low income, yet they expect great quality, they expect a lot of personalization in the services. There is a lot of regional spread because of which the market is very fragmented. There is intense competition because there are lots of entrepreneurs. So even if somebody has a great idea, a lot of people copy that very soon. Preferences are also evolving very quickly because of social media. People kind of copy trends very, very quickly. Because of this, for a brand to maintain high growth and also to do it profitably over the long term becomes really, really hard. And therefore, this also begs the question, right, that how do we identify which companies to invest in which can become big consumer brands in India? What is the principle or whatever philosophy that we use in Singularity to identify such companies? So what we did is we went back to what we know best. We were part of building this company called CaratLane, which luckily for us met all of these conditions and became a big consumer brand in India. So we went and studied CaratLane and some other companies like that to understand what principles we could distill from those journeys, which could help us qualify what principles of investing we could create at Singularity.
Actually, in our CaratLane journey as well, I think when we were about 715 crores of revenue, that's when we broke even and started making money. And then we had about 3.5 lakh customers at that point. The most interesting part was to reach that journey was that we were very conscious of our growth as well as conserving cash at the same time. And I think the growth accelerated a bit more after that as well also, because now the free cash became available to us. And that's something as a principle we've always taken away from our business. I think we had a 50% CAGR for the next 4 years till we fully ran that business. And at the same time, all of that happened very profitably as well. And the few things that stand out, one, we always looked forward to what the customer wanted a few years ahead. That was one very important part. Second, we never forgot what is the wallet size of the customer. So irrespective of the underlying commodity price going up, we were on top of the game to make sure that our ASP did not rise at that point. Third, instead of just focusing on lifetime value, we also looked at share of wallet, like what more can he buy from us? That little extra inventory turn to have as discipline, saying what not to do across as well also. What is the process of how many stores do you operate and do that? It gave us that little extra margin every single place, which allowed us to be the highest in terms of, most accretive margin across the business and also becoming far more profitable than anybody else in this space, at least also at that time.
So essentially, Mithun, from what we did at CaratLane and what we saw at other similar companies, I think 3 things came out very clearly. One was the whole principle of how to look at profitability, to look at growth, and then the principle on how to look at good execution. And I think those have now become the cornerstones of how we are looking at both categories as well as companies in Singularity. The growth part is important because we have seen a lot of companies scale to a certain level and then they struggle. I think the key takeaway from this was to look at categories and companies which are more and more disruption proof, where either because of the nature of the category or because of external factors, like you mentioned in the case of gold rate for CaratLane, the business should not get disrupted. I think if you avoid disruption and you focus on spaces where there will be continuous growth, then you are able to keep growing on a regular basis. So I think in the current context, I think we have looked at companies which should be AI proof. And I think that happens in categories where the human interaction is still important. Like we saw in the case of CaratLane also, right? I don't think we can put robots in the stores and people still want to go to the stores in spite of all the technology change which has happened. So the human interaction part, I think, is a good filter for that. I think the other big change which is happening today is the 10-minute delivery. And again, I think CaratLane meets that criteria also, that it's 10-minute delivery proof, so it doesn't get disrupted. I think the other ones which are important is to look at sunrise industries, because I think there's a lot of headroom for growth. So you, by design, you will be able to get good growth for the next 5, 10, 15 years, even if you are not the market leader, but just the category tailwind will drive you forward. That looking at premium customer segments, right, where even in bad times, the demand is still robust, right? Like we saw during COVID, right? if you remember, we had shut down marketing, but even still we would get customers who wanted to place orders because their jewelry is a category where, everybody spends out of their income level also in some ways if there is a special occasion. So I think those are some of the lenses I think which we have decided to use to look at which categories and companies can continue to grow and be more robust against whatever factors generally disrupt companies and come as a counter to their growth. So that I think would be how we have kind of started to look at the companies which meet our condition for growth.
So also somewhere along the principle of profitability becomes that important as well also. And I've always felt that we have to look for in these teams a lot of discipline as well also, because profitability and discipline often seem very correlated as well also. And what are those little things that they do? Not the 80, not the 90, what is that 100 or 105% that they are doing which actually gets them profitability? How many free customers do they create for themselves? What else are they creating across that sort of delivers? What's the brand love that they have that gets them profitability as well also? And as we were looking for these good execution, there were a few things that always stood out as well. One is inherently good gross margin in the category. If the category itself struggles with gross margin, then it's very difficult to have, build something long term on that part. Post that, look for businesses where if the ASP is good, at least the marketing cost can come down. You can have low marketing cost across. So absolute might be large, but the percentage has to come down on that case, at least on that one. And third but not the least, something where at scale you get operating leverage. So the model of the business has to be such that it actually delivers operating leverage. If the model per se does not deliver operating leverage, then it's always going to be a fight to sort of make that successful. So I think these three principles for us under the broad profitability umbrella would deliver very well if we can find companies that sort of meet these criteria.
But actually, if you think about it, the part which makes both profitability and growth happen, and the one which is actually least talked about, because I think it is less cool to talk about it, is the execution principle. And like you mentioned in CaratLane's case, right, we had a little more gross margin than everybody else. Our retention rate was slightly better. Our failure on opening stores was slightly better. Our marketing cost was slightly better. Our turn was slightly better. So we were able to get this slightly better in multiple parts of our business, like the New Zealand cricket team. And I think that is the underlying thing which makes even the first two principles work, which is the execution rigor and the execution principle, right? And I think what we have seen is that there is this theory, right, which is very popular called the theory of marginal gains, right? That you have marginal improvement in each part of your business continuously so that the aggregate then becomes very large. And I think if you look at it very carefully, you can identify companies which do this very well. Because whether you look at the growth part or you look at the profitability part, right, those small improvements which then lead to, finally your EBITDA or your profitability becoming good or getting that extra 5-10% growth every year, it all comes from that execution. I think this one is our favorite out of the three, that execution makes profitability and growth happen. So execution is like a non-negotiable.
Yeah.
And I think, so that I think is the three principles, Mithun, which I think will be the foundation of our investment journey, I think at Singularity. And I think it's very early in our journey. I think we don't have lots of examples to talk about, but I think we can talk about one example, which I think will kind of help in illustrating the point we have been trying to make.
If I had to think of one, Akshay Kalpa, for example, while it's not a very large investment for us, but still, the guy makes A2 milk, given his life to the farm literally. Sashi, who came from a tech background and decided to do this, 10 years of just being at the farm trying to figure this out. So he's built a moat which is so hard to break. I mean, I think the only US FDA approved milk. So product champion at first, allows him to get higher pricing power, able to charge 25% more than anybody else across. Now built in 2 states. And as he goes deeper into a city or a state, the operating leverage really kicks in and we're able to see profitability come through as well also. And as we become more prosperous as a country, I have no doubt that the demand for something, for a good product or a really good product, is always going to keep increasing as well also. So I feel very good about that business.
So if you think about all these examples which we shared, all these principles which we spoke about, you will notice that it kind of combines the way an investor thinks in terms of how we looked at some of the profitability metrics, as well as how a operator thinks, right? Because they go into the details to understand how to get growth, how to get execution. That we combine the mind of an investor and the thinking of an operator to get both these principles together, both these mindsets together rather, so that we can get the best of both these worlds, so that we get both the growth part and the profitability part together. And I think this in a way is the distillation of all of this work which we have done, Mithun.
Also, we've had this wonderful 1 year of, we can call it two brains, but the two brains also have their tug, which is necessary for anything to sort of give you, to fructify into something. And I think the tug of the investor brain and the tug of the operator brain is happening as well. And we've learned a lot over the past 1 year. And I think we've been slow to sort of begin our investing on this part of it, because we want to sort of be very deliberate about what we are doing, and now feel that we have something nice and we have a good enough alignment on both sides to be able to figure out how should we go about investing in this space.